Part 1. The Test of Compassion Characters. Emma Rodriguez, struggling artist. Harold Whitmore, disguised billionaire. Various passers-by. Emma encounters Harold disguised as homeless man during rainstorm. She gives her last money, despite her own. Struggles scene sets up the moral test, and Emma's genuine character. Part 2. The Revelation. And reward. Harold reveals his true identity as tech mogul. Emma's act of kindness leads to life-changing opportunity. Themes of how genuine compassion creates unexpected connections. Part 1. The Test of Compassion. The October rain fell in heavy sheets across downtown Portland, turning the bustling streets into rivers of hurried footsteps and colorful umbrellas. Emma Rodriguez pulled her thin denim jacket tighter around her shoulders as she stepped out of the small coffee shop where she worked part-time. The 24-year-old art student had just finished another grueling shift, her feet aching from standing behind the counter for 8 hours straight, serving overpriced lattes to customers who barely acknowledged her existence. Her canvas messenger bag, worn and patched in several places, contained her last paycheck, a meager sum that would barely cover her rent and groceries for the week. Emma's fingers traced the envelope through the bag's fabric, calculating once again how she would stretch every dollar. Her dream of becoming a professional artist seemed more distant with each passing day, especially when basic survival consumed all her energy and resources. As she waited at the crosswalk, Emma noticed the usual evening crowd rushing past her. Business executives in expensive suits hurried toward their luxury cars, their phones pressed to their ears as they discussed deals worth more money than Emma would see in years. College students from the wealthy university nearby laughed loudly as they planned their weekend shopping trips. Everyone seemed to exist in their own bubble of comfort and security, something Emma had never known. The light changed, and Emma began crossing the street when she spotted him. Huddled against the brick wall of an old building sat an elderly man, his weathered hands holding a small cardboard sign that read, "Anything helps, God bless." His gray hair was matted from the rain, and his clothes, a faded military jacket and torn jeans, were soaked through. Most people walked past him without a glance, some even going out of their way to avoid getting too close. Harold Whitmore, though Emma didn't know his name, had been sitting in that spot for 3 hours. At 72, the retired technology mogul looked nothing like the man whose photo had graced the covers of Fortune magazine for decades. His normally pristine silver hair was deliberately disheveled. His usually manicured hands were dirty, and he wore clothes he had purchased from a thrift store specifically for this purpose. Harold had built Whitmore Technologies from a small startup in his garage to a multi-billion-dollar empire. But today he was conducting a different kind of business, a test of human character. For months, Harold had been disguising himself as a homeless person in different parts of the city. He was searching for something money couldn't buy: genuine kindness. His only daughter had passed away 5 years earlier, leaving behind a small nonprofit organization dedicated to helping struggling artists. Harold wanted to find someone truly deserving to take over the foundation, someone whose compassion wasn't motivated by personal gain or recognition. Emma approached slowly, her heart breaking at the sight of the elderly man shivering in the cold rain. She had walked past homeless individuals before, always wishing she could help, but knowing her own financial situation made it impossible. They felt different somehow. Maybe it was the way he held his sign with such dignity, or perhaps it was the kind eyes that met hers when she stopped in front of him. "Sir, are you okay?" Emma asked, crouching down to his level despite the rain soaking through her jeans. "You must be freezing out here." Harold looked up, surprised by her genuine concern. Most people who acknowledged him at all either dropped coins without making eye contact or offered sanctimonious advice about finding work. This young woman was actually seeing him as a human being. "I'm managing, dear," Harold replied, his voice hoarse from the cold. "Just trying to stay dry under this awning." Emma glanced around at the steady stream of people hurrying past, their umbrellas creating a moving canopy of indifference. A businessman in an expensive overcoat had just exited the nearby restaurant, complaining loudly into his phone about his stock portfolio, while stepping around Harold as if he were merely an obstacle. "Have you eaten today?" Emma asked, opening her bag and pulling out a granola bar she had been saving for dinner. This isn't much, but it's something. Harold accepted the offering with genuine gratitude, though he was more interested in studying Emma's face. There was no condescension in her expression, no pity or judgment, just pure human compassion. Thank you, child. That's very kind of you. Emma hesitated for a moment, then reached into her bag again and pulled out her paycheck envelope. She had already done the math in her head. If she gave him the cash inside, she would have to choose between paying her rent or buying groceries for the next 2 weeks. But looking at this elderly man sitting in the rain, the choice became clear. No, this isn't a lot, Emma said, pulling out the $47 in cash from her paycheck. But maybe it can help you find somewhere warm to stay tonight. Harold stared at the money in her outstretched hand, recognizing the significance of her gesture. The bills were crumpled in small denominations, clearly not money from someone with abundance to spare. This young woman was offering him everything she had. I can't take this, Harold said softly, though he made no move to push her hand away. You look like you need it more than I do. Emma smiled, the first genuine smile she had worn all day. We all need kindness, don't we? Money comes and goes, but knowing someone cares, that's what really matters. As she pressed the money into Harold's weathered hands, a group of teenagers walked by, laughing loudly at something on their phones. One of them noticed Emma kneeling beside Harold and nudged his friend. Look at that idiot giving money to some bum, the teenager said loudly enough for both Emma and Harold to hear. Doesn't she know he'll just spend it on drugs or alcohol? Emma's cheeks flushed with anger, but before she could respond, Harold placed a gentle hand on her arm. Let them talk, dear. Their words say more about them than about us. The teenagers moved on, but their comments had attracted the attention of other passers-by. A well-dressed woman in designer heels stopped and shook her head disapprovingly at Emma. You're just enabling him, the woman said coldly. People like that need to learn to help themselves instead of relying on handouts from bleeding hearts like you. Emma stood slowly, rain dripping from her hair as she faced the woman. People. Like what? Human beings who are struggling? When did we become so afraid of showing compassion that we call it enabling? The woman huffed and walked away, muttering something about naive young people. Emma turned back to Harold, who was watching the entire exchange with growing admiration. In the short time he had been conducting his test, he had witnessed countless acts of cruelty and indifference. People had spit at him, kicked dirt on his sign, and called him names that would make sailors blush. But this young woman had not only shown him kindness, she had defended him against those who would judge them both. What's your name, dear? Harold asked as Emma knelt back down beside him. Emma, she replied, pulling a small piece of paper from her bag and writing something on it. Emma Rodriguez, and here's my phone number. If you need anything, food, someone to talk to, whatever, please call me, okay? Harold accepted the paper, noting that Emma had written not just her number, but also a small message. You matter, and you're not alone. He carefully folded it and placed it in his jacket pocket. Next to his real identification and the business cards that revealed his true identity, as Emma prepared to leave, Harold called out to her. Emma, wait. Why did you help me, really?
Ellie.
Emma paused, considering the question seriously. Because I've been where you are? Maybe not exactly, but close enough. I know what it feels like when the world treats you like you're invisible. Deserves to be seen, to be treated with dignity. We're all just people trying to make it through another day. She smiled once more and walked away into the rain, her empty wallet and growling stomach forgotten in the warmth of having helped another human being. Harold watched her go, her figure disappearing into the crowd of umbrellas and rushing commuters. For the first time in years, he felt hope, not for his business ventures or investment portfolios, but for humanity itself. Harold remained in his position for another hour, observing dozens of people pass by without acknowledgement. A few dropped coins, most ignored him completely, and some actively avoided his section of sidewalk. But none approached him with the genuine concern and selfless generosity that Emma had shown. As the evening grew darker and the rain intensified, Harold finally stood and gathered his makeshift belongings. His expensive car was parked in a nearby garage, and his driver was waiting to take him back to his penthouse apartment. But tonight, Harold's mind was focused entirely on the young artist who had given him everything she had, expecting nothing in return. He pulled out his phone and dialed his personal assistant. "Margaret, I need you to research someone for me." Emma Rodriguez, early 20s, works at a coffee shop downtown. Want to know everything about her background, her family, her dreams, everything. Harold smiled as he ended the call, Emma's crumpled phone number still clutched in his hand. The test was over, and for the first time in his 5-year search, he had found exactly what he was looking for. Tomorrow would bring revelations that would change both their lives forever. But tonight, Harold went to sleep grateful for the reminder that genuine kindness still existed in the world. The rain continued to fall on the empty street corner where two strangers had connected across the divide of wealth and poverty, proving that the most valuable currency in life isn't money, it's compassion. The revelation and reward the morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Whitmore Technologies' executive boardroom, casting long shadows across the polished mahogany table. Harold Whitmore sat at the head of the table, dressed in his usual tailored navy suit, his silver hair perfectly groomed, a stark contrast to the disheveled homeless man Emma had encountered just 12 hours earlier. Before him lay a comprehensive file that his assistant Margaret had compiled overnight, detailing every aspect of Emma Rodriguez's life. Emma Maria Rodriguez. Age 24, born in East Portland to immigrant parents who had worked multiple jobs to support their family. Her father, Miguel, had been a construction worker until a workplace accident left him partially disabled when Emma was 16. Her mother, Rosa, cleaned office buildings at night while working as a sea maid during the day. Despite their financial struggles, they had managed to send Emma to community college, where she excelled in fine arts while working part-time jobs to support herself. The file revealed that Emma had been living in a studio apartment in one of Portland's rougher neighborhoods, surviving on instant noodles and peanut butter sandwiches while pursuing her dream of becoming a professional artist. She volunteered at a local shelter on weekends, teaching art classes to homeless children. Had been saving every spare dollar for over 2 years to afford supplies for a gallery showing that it might launch her career. Harold closed the file, his decision already made, picked up his phone and dialed Emma's number. The same crumpled piece of paper she had given him the night before, now smoothed out and placed carefully beside his computer. Emma was in the middle of mixing paint. Colors in her cramped studio apartment when her phone rang. She didn't recognize the number, but something compelled her to answer. "Hello?" she said, wiping her paint-stained hands on an old towel. "Emma, this is Harold, the gentleman you helped last night. I was wondering if you might have time to meet with me today. There's something important I need to discuss with you." Emma's heart skipped with concern. "Of course. Are you okay? Did something happen? You need medical attention, or I'm fine, dear," Harold interrupted gently, touched by her immediate worry for his well-being. "But I do need to see you. Could you meet me at the Riverside Cafe on 5th Street at noon?" Emma glanced at her easel, where she had been working on a painting she hoped to include in her portfolio. The canvas showed a city street scene with people rushing past a lone figure sitting against a wall, inspired by their encounter the previous evening. "I'll be there," she said, without hesitation. 3 hours later, Emma walked into the upscale cafe, her paint-stained jeans and faded sweater making her feel out of place among the well-dressed lunch crowd. She spotted Harold immediately, though. She almost didn't recognize him. Gone were the tattered clothes and unkempt appearance. Instead, she saw a distinguished elderly gentleman in an expensive suit, his silver hair neatly styled, sitting at a corner table with perfect posture. Emma approached slowly, confusion evident on her face. "Harold, I almost didn't recognize you." Harold stood and pulled out her chair, a gesture that made Emma even more bewildered. "Please, sit down. I owe you an explanation and an apology." As Emma sat down, she noticed other patrons in the cafe glancing their way. A woman at a nearby table was whispering to her companion while looking directly at Harold, and Emma caught fragments of their conversation. ... Whitmore Technologies ... Billionaire ... What's he doing with that girl ... "I don't understand, Emma," said her voice barely above a whisper. "Last night you were?" And now you're... She gestured at his transformation, unable to find the words. Harold leaned forward, its expression sincere and slightly pained. Emma, my full name is Harold James Whitmore. I'm the founder and former CEO of Whitmore Technologies. Last night, I was conducting what I suppose you could call a test of human character, though I realize now how that must sound. Emma stared at him, her mind struggling to process the information. Harold Whitmore, she had heard that name before, seen it. In newspapers and business magazines. One of the wealthiest men in the Pacific Northwest, a tech pioneer who had revolutionized cloud computing and artificial intelligence. You were ... testing me. Emma's voice was flat, hurt creeping into her tone. My kindness was some kind of experiment to you? No, Harold said quickly, reaching across the table as if to take her hand, then stopping himself. Please, let me explain. 5 years ago, I lost my daughter, Catherine. She was my only child, and before she died, she established a foundation to support struggling artists, people like you who have talent and passion but lack the resources to pursue their dreams. Emma's anger began to soften as she saw genuine grief in Harold's eyes. Catherine made me promise to find the right person to run her foundation when she was gone, Harold continued. She didn't want it to be another wealthy socialite looking for a tax write-off or a business connection. She wanted someone who understood struggle, who had genuine compassion for others, despite facing their own hardships. Harold paused to take a sip of water, gathering his thoughts. For 5 years, I've been searching. I've donated to countless charities, attended fundraisers, interviewed dozens of candidates. But I realized I was only meeting people who knew who I was, who were performing kindness because they wanted something from me. Mel listened intently as Harold explained how he had begun disguising himself as a homeless person, testing the character of strangers who had no idea of his wealth or influence. I've been spit on, cursed at, ignored, and humiliated more times than I can count. Most people revealed their true nature when they thought no one important was watching. But you, Harold's voice grew warm, you saw a human being in need and responded with genuine compassion. You gave me your last dollar, defended me against critics, and offered me your phone number, not because you wanted something, but because you cared about a stranger's well-being. Meth felt tears welling up in her eyes, overwhelmed by the revelation and the implications of Harold's words. I don't know what to say, I just... ... I was raised to help people when I could. It wasn't anything special. That's exactly why it was special, Harold replied. True kindness isn't performed for an audience or a reward. It's simply the right thing to do, and you did it without hesitation, despite your own financial struggles. Harold reached into his briefcase and pulled out a leather portfolio. May, I would like to offer you the position of executive as director of the Catherine Whitmore Foundation for the Arts. The foundation has an endowment of $50 million, dedicated to supporting emerging artists, providing grants, funding exhibitions, and creating opportunities for people who might otherwise never get a chance to share their talents with the world. Emma's hands trembled as she stared at the portfolio Harold had placed in front of her. I don't understand. It's too much. I'm just a community college student who paints in her apartment. I don't have the experience or qualifications. To run a foundation, you have something more valuable than experience, Harold said firmly. You have integrity, compassion, and an understanding of what it means to struggle for your dreams. Those qualities can't be taught or bought. They've come from the heart. Harold opened the portfolio to reveal detailed plans for the foundation's mission, including artist residency programs, community workshops, scholarship opportunities, and exhibition spaces. Catherine dreamed of creating a place where artistic talent would be nurtured regardless of economic background. With your leadership, we can make that dream a reality. Emma wiped tears from her eyes as she read through the documents. The foundation's mission statement could have been written about her own experiences and dreams. Why me? Really, why me? There must be hundreds of people more qualified, because yesterday, when you thought no one was watching, you revealed your true character, Harold answered. You showed kindness to someone you perceived as having nothing to offer you in return. That's the kind of person Catherine would have wanted to carry on her legacy. Harold leaned back in his chair, his expression becoming more personal. Emma, I've spent decades building a business empire, accumulating wealth and influence. But in all that time, no one has reminded me of what Catherine valued most: the simple, powerful act of treating every human being with dignity and compassion. Emma looked around the cafe, noticing that several patrons were now openly staring at their table, some taking pictures with their phones. The weight of Harold's offer began to settle in, not just the professional opportunity, but the responsibility and the dramatic change it would bring to her life. "What about my art?" Emma asked. "I've been working toward my own gallery showing." "My own career as a painter?" Harold smiled. "The foundation would encourage and support your artistic development. In fact, part of your role would be to serve as a mentor and example to other emerging artists. You would have access to studios, materials, exhibition opportunities, and connections throughout the art world that most artists can only dream of." Harold reached into his jacket and pulled out a check, placing it face down on the table. "Regardless of your decision about the foundation, I want to repay your kindness from last night. This should cover your immediate expenses and allow you to focus on your art without worrying about rent or groceries." Emma flipped over the check and gasped. It was made out for $10,000, more money than she had ever seen at one time. "Harold, I can't accept this. What I did last night wasn't about money. I would have helped you regardless." "I know," Harold replied. "That's exactly why you deserve it. Catherine always said that kindness should be rewarded, not taken for granted." Emma stared at the check, then at the foundation portfolio, then at Harold's kind but expectant face. Her mind raced with possibilities, the chance to help other struggling artists, to make a real difference in people's lives, to honor the memory of a woman she had never met, but whose values aligned perfectly with her own. "There's one condition," Emma said finally, her voice growing stronger with conviction. "If I accept this position, I want to establish a program specifically for homeless individuals who have artistic talents. Art therapy, creative workshops, exhibition opportunities, whatever it takes to help them express themselves and rebuild their lives." Harold felt his chest tighten with emotion. Catherine would have made the same request. "Consider it the Foundation's first new initiative under your leadership." Emma extended her hand across the table. "Then I accept, Mr. Whitmore. But I have to ask, no more tests, right? No more disguises or hidden agendas?" Harold shook her hand firmly, his eyes twinkling with amusement and respect. "No more tests, Emma. From now on, our relationship will be built on complete honesty and mutual respect." As they sat in the cafe discussing the details of Emma's new role and the Foundation's future, neither of them noticed the young woman at a corner table who had been listening to their entire conversation. Jessica Chen, a reporter for the Portland Tribune, quietly finished her notes and smiled. She had just witnessed one of the most heartwarming stories of her career. She couldn't wait to share it with the world. The next morning, Emma woke up in her studio apartment for the last time. Harold had arranged for her to move into a furnished apartment near the Foundation's offices, and movers would arrive that afternoon to transport her few belongings and art supplies. She stood before her easel, looking at the painting she had been working on the day before, the street scene, inspired by her encounter with Harold. Now she knew the rest of the story, and she picked up her brush to add a new element to the composition in the background. Barely visible unless one looked closely, she painted a small ray of sunlight breaking through the stormy clouds above the city street, illuminating both the seated figure and the young woman kneeling beside him. Emma smiled as she signed her name in the corner of the canvas. It would be the first painting displayed in the Catherine Whitmore Foundation's gallery, a reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary transformations begin with the simplest acts of human kindness. The story of Harold and Emma would indeed make headlines, inspiring countless others to look beyond appearances and respond to need with compassion. But for both of them, the real reward wasn't the media attention or public recognition. It was the knowledge that Catherine's dream would live on, touching the lives of struggling artists for generations to come, all because one young woman chose kindness over indifference on a rainy October night.